Greetings, fellows. So it's coming up to Christmas, and of course, I'm playing the Silent Hill 2 remake. I was there for the PS2 and all that. I am old, so Silent Hill 2 is definitely among my favourite games. I'm more of a Silent Hill 3 person in a way, but yeah, I was definitely keeping my eye on the Silent Hill 2 remake, and I know there was a certain amount of fuss about exactly how it will be handled. There hasn't really been a good Silent Hill game in a long time. I know the consensus is that it kind of started sucking from Silent Hill 4 onwards, and the whole thing's been lost for a long time. That's the short version. So there's a bit of concern about this, and there was definitely some fuss about the exact design of the characters and stuff, but basically I think it is good, and if you need the short version, it turns out it is good. Everything, I mean, not everything's fine, but it's good, and you can play it, and it hasn't got any, like, offensively dumb stuff in it or anything, at least not so far. I can see why people were really cautious about how this was being handled, because if ever there was an emotional game, I mean, Silent Hill 2 might be the most emotional game of all time. Just, it's all about a guy looking for his dead wife and feeling depressed and all that stuff. So you've really got to nail, like, everything, like the tone of voice on particular lines and just everything, you know. So I can see how this was a game that really lended itself to being scrutinized and fussed over. But I mean, I'll have to see how it is long term, but basically it's still pretty darn creepy. And the thing about making a remake is, when you make a remake of a game like Silent Hill 2, it might seem as though you're being given this license to print money, like, oh, it's Silent Hill 2, I'll just buy that, but also, you're going to be compared to the original, obviously, but worse than that, you're also going to be compared to everyone's memories of the original, and people's memories of the original probably leave out a couple of annoyances I'll get into as well, but like, you remember all the emotional stuff and you forget opening your map 100 times or something, but I'll get to that a bit later. I'm not finished with the game yet, so this isn't a complete review, but, you know, you get to the point where you've made games yourself and you know where this game is going, and you know roughly what's in it, you know what kind of framework it has, so I can speak to the experience, I think, of at least a good chunk of the game and how it feels. So the first thing I actually want to bring up is not what you expect, it's the puddles. So I spent a fair while just kind of embracing the environments and trying to savour this, and it's very much a savouring kind of a game. Like, you don't really want to get from A to B in this game, you kind of want to savour the experience. And yeah, I was really impressed with the sheer dampness and the puddles in the game. Everything's really damp and decaying. I think that's a big visual theme in the game, that in James's world everything is kind of damp, so there's there's puddles, and early on I just found myself walking around the puddles and stuff. I mean, we get a bit of flooding here in Buckingham, and I should know, but yeah, I just walked around the puddles, kind of playing along with this stuff. I could have been just kind of tromping along, but you don't want to do that. You want to take things seriously, and yeah, so I really like the puddles in this game, and the sheer sense of dampness and misery they managed to convey. One technical issue I've had is that, at least on my computer, the game can get stuck on this kind of low frame rate thing for a little bit. You get kind of 10 seconds-ish of this really low frame rate, with everything still going along at the same speed, but you get a low frame rate, and it's tough to fight monsters in that state and stuff. One time I died because of this technical nonsense, but only once, and to be honest, it was never really about, this game isn't really about intense combat, but like, it's one technical annoyance, it's the major technical annoyance I think I had in my experience. If you played a Silent Hill game before, you'll be familiar with the structure of this thing. I'd call it kind of semi-linear, like, the actual story is obviously linear, but you're put inside these bubbles of places you have to explore, and even they, like, if you get to the apartments, say, it feels like I'm kind of exploring it, even though actually there's a lot of locked doors and one-way doors and doors where you have to solve a weird puzzle and stuff, and normally you're being led around, but I still managed to feel like I was exploring, but that's kind of how Silent Hill's always been. If you've played a previous Silent Hill game, this is structured just the same way, and I do care about structure. So one thing I really like about this being a more modern game is that there's a lot less friction in this. You can say I'm lazy or something, but the old Silent Hill games, which I played quite a bit of, whether it's 1, 2, or 3, or I think 4, there's quite a lot of walking around basically a Silent Hill dungeon, like the hospital or the apartments or whatever, and then looking at your map. I lose direction very easily, so I'm constantly like walking along, and you try to open a door, and then you kind of, it's not obvious when you can press the interaction button, and then you've got the white text writing itself on saying this door is locked, or this door is locked from the other side, and then you open your map and the screen fades to black and it fades back in with the map and you take note of where you are and it fades back to black again and then it fades back to the game again and now you walk through a door and it fades back to black again. I don't know why I put up with it in many ways. You could say that builds atmosphere, but like, I always thought that was one of the big technical weaknesses of these games, that you were constantly just kind of being taken out of the experience. So I could go on about that in a separate video. Killer 7, don't get me... Killer 7 did it deliberately, but don't get me started. But, yeah, so I did prefer the less frictiony approach, where in this game you can just kind of take out your map and look at it. You can't walk around or anything like it's Minecraft, but you can just walk around these environments and just... When you try to open a door, there's no white text, he just kind of has a go with the door. There's even an achievement for trying to open 50 doors that you can't open, which is nice. It's almost like an Elden Ring where they have that thing where they put, like, you don't have the right in front of the doors. I don't know if you guys have seen that. And with the less friction, I was... Yeah, the other thing was I noticed this changes the experience a little bit, because a big part of the game is the soundtrack, right? I think it's Akira Yamaoka who does the soundtrack. I've heard his name enough times. And... It used to be that you would have all these loading times and stuff, right? So if you're out in a corridor in the apartments, there's one creepy soundtrack going on. You go to a door, the door opens, things kind of shut down, screen fades to black, and then the new soundtrack happens after a loading time quite often, that little shoe prints loading time thing that seems to be kind of iconic now. But now that it's got less loading times in it, what you get instead is you've got one music in one room, you open the door and go through, and then when you're out in the corridor or something, the music kind of switches over, and it feels a bit different. I get the feeling they might not have designed the soundtrack that way if they'd had this the whole time. It's just, I don't know, it's just a little bit different in terms of how it makes the atmosphere happen, because it feels a bit more like there's almost like speakers in the walls or something playing this for you, you know? It's a bit different when there isn't these loading times just clearly giving you a distinction between one room and the next. Just like I said, the atmosphere stuff really matters. This is absolutely a kind of high-class spook house in a way. I've got to say, I also have been a big fan of slimy monsters for a long time. Silent Hill put me onto slimy monsters. I really like surreal horror and nasty, wriggly, fleshy monsters. So I think they did a good job with the monsters. I might have preferred them to fit more closely to the original design, but the monsters are still pretty good. I like how the nurses kind of stand there and twitch their heads sometimes. And they keep the monsters relatively interesting. I think there's quite a lot of monsters, but they keep them interesting. Sometimes they're hiding under cars, and they don't show up on your radio noises until they come out from under the car. Sometimes you walk into a room and a monster runs away, and you're like, oh dear, the monster's in the room somewhere now, and where is it? And so far it hasn't been that intense survival-wise, but just kind of atmosphere-wise and stuff, that the monsters are they're kind of there for atmosphere more than threat, basically, right? You always get the sense particularly in Silent Hill 2, that the monsters are not really the problem. Kind of you're the problem. You're the real monster. And the monsters are just symptoms of something bigger. So I don't really want this game to be that hard. And there's a certain amount of resource management stuff. Like, I found myself learning which monsters are best to handle with, like, I think the nurses are best. Just sneak up on the nurses with a shotgun and shoot them once with a shotgun and then kick them. And fighting them is kind of nice too. Like, I don't know about... I'm not very good at dodging yet, but... at least short term, I just found that the kind of desperate way James swings at them and the noises he makes as he kind of kicks them and everything, it's all nicely done. So I'm happy with how the combat is. I feel like they finally got that right, actually, because they've had a number of Silent Hill games where the combat got too action-y or just they kind of lost their way a bit for many, many years. One thing I will have to carry over from my complaints about the old games is that if you're doing well, there seems to be no limit to how many health items you're able to carry. So I had a while where I was just collecting loads and loads of health drinks. I had like 10 health drinks and was it like 8 syringes or something, which are basically a full health potion. And I was just carrying these around. So, I mean, the atmosphere's still good, but you meet a monster with you're like, whatever. Even if you reduce me to 1 hit point, I've got like 8 syringes. I'm gonna be fine. It's a very weird sort of situation to be in, where everything's still creepy looking, but you're just kind of thinking, I've got plenty of little syringes where I can just heal myself back up. Well, what are you actually gonna do? So, I don't know, it's something I'd really like to fix in my own games when I make this. I would like to make a horror game myself, kind of Silent Hill 2.5, but now I'm going to have to up my game, because part of the reason I wanted to make this semi-review is because I'm going to have to take notes here, because they've kind of beaten me to it finally. But yeah, so you carry around a lot of health potions if you're doing well. At the same time, I hit a boss I really struggled with, and I lost a lot of my health potions and stuff, but yeah, I really feel like carrying around a huge number of weird health vitamin drinks and syringes has always been a bit of a weakness of this series, and they haven't done anything with that here. A bit of a design grumble. This is a principle I might as well talk about. I found that once in a while, because I've been playing Elden Ring, and you press Y all the time in Elden Ring, I kept accidentally drinking a health drink when I didn't really need it. I was near full health. And then I kind of press Y, and then I go, oh crap, that's the thing that makes you drink a health drink, isn't it? But then if you lose track of that, it just feels like my principle here is that you should not be able to waste ammo accidentally, particularly. There shouldn't be something where you're reminding yourself what all the buttons do, and that makes you lose ammo. Like, I've tried to follow that in my own games, but I ended up drinking some health drinks. I almost feel like I lost more potential health. Like, there's a bigger opportunity cost just from accidentally pressing the Y button than there is from getting hit by the monsters almost. I mean, not really, but it just starts to feel like the real threat is just the Y button itself. So mostly I've got good things to say about the environments and everything. I'll go into more details in a bit, but the environments all feel good. They feel kind of interesting to explore. It's all a lot of the same sort of structure of these narrow corridors and turning around corners and stuff, but the environments are interestingly decorated. They've really got this kind of density to them. I did find that you get to a point quite often where you've cleared out all the monsters and you kind of know what's there, and now you're just jogging around trying to find the next puzzle or figure out what you've missed, and then it starts to feel like the atmosphere starts to flag a bit, because walking down a new corridor knowing that there's some monsters in weird positions does feel kind of intense. But then once you've already cleared out the area and you're just jogging around, like, well, what have I got to do? Somehow the atmosphere starts to feel a bit, it just doesn't hold up quite the same. So I wish they had a way of improving the flow of the game, maybe. And this is a problem you get in all sorts of games. Like, I found this in Doom as well. I got lost in Doom all the time. So to begin with, you're shooting the monsters and it's intense and everything, and then afterwards, you're just kind of wandering around this maze, and it's sort of the pace is just flagging because you can't find the way forward. So that's a threat for all sorts of games. It's a real ubiquitous problem that another little thing I would like to fix in my own endeavours. There's a number of nice little modern touches to this as well. Like, I love it when James finds something important and you see him take out the map and scratch down a little note about the safe or whatever the important thing he's found. It's so cute. Like, you just examine something and James takes out the map automatically and kind of marks something down. There's still stuff magically appearing on these maps, but all the little lines and the red lines and stuff that appear in the Silent Hill map. If you've played a Silent Hill game, you know what I'm talking about. But it's so nice that they've kind of thought about these things a bit more and let you see these things happen live a bit more, and it's a bit more seamless. You're not just fading in and fading out to this map. You see him actually writing things on. I thought that was just a nice touch. And I've really got to praise the dampness again. Like, there's beetles, there's nasty damp bathtubs full of crap. There's a toilet full of horrible good, like the scene of James reaching into the toilet, which I think is fairly famous. They kind of make fun of it in Silent Hill 3 even. I think I can give this away. Like, if you've got a Silent Hill 2 save file on your PS2 save card, you can get Heather to reach into the toilet, and then you can try to get her to reach into the toilet, but she decides not to, and then just looks right into the camera and said, "Who would ever think of doing something so disgusting?" Well, James Sunderland is his name, Missy, and he does reach into the toilet and get a key out of there. But yeah, they're really good at selling these damp environments and the puddles and the decaying walls. And I tried to get footage, I couldn't find it again, but there's a really nasty kind of damp bed at one point. Like, if you've ever, I must be getting old, like if you've ever had trouble with damp in your flat or something, then these environments may resonate with you. It really starts to kind of hammer home that these places are decaying and wet and no one's been here for a long time, and why is James even here? There must be something wrong with him. And I should mention as well this whole Japanese theme. I don't know very much about this, but I'll look up the word for now. But there's this whole Japanese thing about stagnation and water as well. There's some sort of scheme where you have the sun at the top of the hierarchy, and then as things flow downwards, you get, like, water is good if it flows, and then it reaches the bottom and it stagnates there, and there's some kind of word for that. I'm well aware I don't fully understand this idea, but it's some kind of Japanese theme, so I feel like more than ever the game is selling that theme of here's the stagnating water just slowly rotting away, gathering impurity or something. It's very much that idea. And another thing I like to watch for in games is whether they force you to pay attention as well. Like, I think a lot of games have nice graphics, but then there's not really much reason to pay attention to the graphics, and you're just kind of pulling the joystick forward, just kind of on your mission, you know. All you really care about is opening treasure chests and hitting stuff or something, and there's this nice environment around. So I really think the graphics go to waste in a lot of games. But here, they kind of make you pay attention to the sounds, because sometimes the sounds are monsters. Most of the time it's not, but sometimes it's something nasty around the corner. And they make you pay attention to the graphics because you've got puzzles to solve and clues to find and stuff. So I think they did a pretty good job. I know it's all based on the design of Silent Hill 2, but just in terms of what graphics and sound they have, I think they have nice excuses for you to pay attention to these things, because really I think we only pay attention to things we're incentivized to pay attention to, don't we? Ooh, so a couple of random things about the character and plot. I'm not going to give away too much. I think people broadly know the plot of this, don't they? It's the experience more than the kind of raw facts we're after here. But yeah, one thing, again, I really like about this game is a bit of a pet peeve of mine that happens in other games. So this happens all the time where you've got an environment where there's zombies or demons or something, and then characters meet up, and what you'd expect is for them to join forces, right? Like, pretty much always. But almost always, and I'm looking at you, Devil May Cry and Resident Evil and stuff, the characters kind of meet up, they have a slightly weird conversation, whether it's supposed to be weird or not, and then one of them jumps unhelpfully away or decides to stay there for no particular reason, all because it's kind of difficult in a number of ways to implement having two characters working together, or you don't really want to overshadow the player's experience, or just characters just behave strangely when they meet up in this zombie-infested environment, you know. It always kind of bothers me to see them being so weird. Like, people already think video game players are weirdos, and then you see these damn weirdos in the game. Anyway, so this still happens here in Silent Hill 2, because the town has got these slimy monsters running around. They seem to be kind of subjective monsters, like it depends whether you've got enough trauma or something to summon the monsters. But here, I don't question that. It's still there, the characters still behave weirdly, but in this context, I don't question why the characters are behaving weirdly, because it's clear that all these people have serious issues, and like when James meets up with Angela, you can kind of see why. I mean, I think most people hearing this probably know the deal with Angela, but like, you'll know Angela has some serious attachment issues, and it becomes clear why. And James obviously has attachment issues because he's got his dead wife to worry about and stuff. Like, for once, it makes sense that these characters are meeting up, having an awkward conversation, and then kind of finding some excuse to split up again and kind of fight their monsters alone. Like, just psychology-wise, that makes perfect sense now. One difference I found was that I think James sounds a little bit less depressed. It just sounds a bit different this time. You could argue about whether it's an improvement. I mean, in a way, the original is right by definition, right? But yeah, the opening shots there, in the original, James is looking into the mirror, just sort of looking at himself, light helpfully not hitting his eyes so he can't see into his eyes. And there he just sort of looks like he's in denial, but in the new version, people have been pointing out, like, he looks a lot more kind of openly miserable and his hands are shaking and stuff. So it seems like he's less in denial, or he's responding differently or something. It's a difference, like it is, and it matters, like I say, who boy, if ever there was a game where the exact emotional gestures matter, right? The exact expression on faces, whether or not somebody's hands are shaking, who boy, this is the game where you have to nail that stuff and know what you're doing. So I hope they know what they're doing, because I haven't seen the whole thing yet. I know there's moments I still remember in the original game where I think James is talking to Angela and he says, "Oh, I'd never kill myself," but he manages to say the line with like zero conviction. It really brings up some doubts about this character. And so you get these moments where James just sounds completely washed up and used up and like he's got nothing left inside. And that mostly comes across, I think, but it doesn't quite sound the same. We could even like put them side by side or something, but it just sounds a little bit different. He sounds like he's kind of pretending to not be empty. I don't know. I haven't even seen the end of this game yet, but just it is a bit of a difference, I think, where I feel like James sounded more openly like he was giving up in the original game, and he's not quite the same in this one. It's just a small difference, but oh boy, do the small differences matter. There's also some more material with Maria in this. I forget quite what they did with Maria, but Maria is... I might as well give away some of this. I'm referring spoilers for an old game, but like Maria's a doppelganger of his wife. Shout out to David Lynch and his love of doppelgangers. Hopefully I'll get to make some videos about that one day. But yeah, and she's kind of a temptation of him to bargain his way out of this, right? Or just deny his way out of this and get a new version of his wife. And I think they have more of a sequence with her kind of being friendly with him, and so she manages to be not even really seductive, really just sort of more friendly with him, and you get to see that James is just pushing people away, and he's kind of cautious about getting close to Maria, kind of justifiably, because she's a bit of a doppelganger, but I don't know, there's just some new scenes of that, and like I say, it just gets more obvious that a lot of these characters have attachment issues. I find that the more you know about people, the more these scenes become interesting. So there's been a lot of, kind of justifiably, a lot of consternation about the character designs and stuff. That is something you want to get right. But something I've definitely seen praise for is the fact that Eddie looks more disgusting and pig-like now. And I suspect that the mistake that happened the first time is that Eddie's supposed to be pretty gluttonous. Like, I think he eats a whole pizza by himself. It's possible that someone helps. But yeah, Eddie's kind of gluttonous and terrible, and he gets worse and worse. But, yeah, I think what happened is, in the original Japanese version, this was a bunch of Japanese guys designing this Western obese character, and I think people are less fat in Japan, or maybe people were just less fat in 2001, I don't know. But he was kind of Japanese-style fat, and now I feel they've made him just look fatter and greasier, and one of the things I really like about new graphics is that we can make things look slimy, just better than you could in a PS2. But yeah, Eddie just looks fatter and greasier, and he's kind of got these amazing eyes. But there's a scene where he's in a cinema, just like he's clearly eating a pizza, I think, by himself. And then he's got this big tub of God knows what. He's just kind of shoveling that into his mouth, and he kind of has cool eyes. But yeah, he just looks more gross and pig-like and fat than ever. And I think they sort of wised up to the modern realities and just made Eddie proper modern-day American fat and not Japanese fat, which I think is good, because this is supposed to be a Western-style game. Like, maybe it's a Western studio now, even. I don't know where Bloober Team are. It doesn't really matter. But I'm just so glad that Eddie is American-style fat, gosh darn it. Part of the reason I wanted to make this video is just because I've been kind of looking forward to something like this for a long time. I've wanted to make my own horror game for a long time. That's still coming up, but I've been building up to this. I am taking notes, and if anything, I'm kind of embarrassed this happened before I got around to it. I am a bit of a sucker for Silent Hill. I may be a little bit unjudgmental about Silent Hill stuff. Quite often, I'm just happy to see slimy monsters. I do actually like the original Silent Hill movie, which is not brilliant, I know, but it's got some fun slimy monsters. So I may be missing out on some details here. I haven't finished the game. I haven't let the long-term stuff settle in. But by and large, I think just as a sort of as an experience, this is well executed, and unless you're really going to fuss about some detail, I think no sweat, just this is fine. They did a good job. They made Silent Hill 2 a remake, and they made it be a bit more slick and modern, and Eddie's fatter, and everything's basically okay, so you can go ahead and play this.